Alrighty, everybody, welcome in. Thank you for joining us tonight, or today rather, as we are going to be doing the Controlled Chaos Season 7 Hennessy Performance League playoff preview. Today we're going to be going over everything related to the Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup Series playoffs upcoming, as we have all that starting tonight and into this week. We're going to be recapping the full season in all respected series. Tonight I have a full cast with me joining, ranging from drivers to broadcasters themselves. I am Shake. I am joined by Lucia, Masopes, Hail State, Furch, and the homie Jake. And we are all going to be going over everything Hennessy Performance Racing on the NASCAR side of things today. We thank you for joining us. We are going to be kind of just giving you a recap of each season, some predictions on who we have in the championship for, some drama later on in the Xfinity series, and we're excited to have you with us. We're going to get started tonight with the Truck Series. So they actually have their first playoff race tonight at 9 o'clock. But the 10 drivers that did make the cutoff line in the Truck Series, it's going to be interesting. It was your points leader was King Mufasa, who after a very crazy, hectic week last week is actually suspended. So he will not be in. The regular season champ will not be joining us, but King Henry, the Ghost, and Speed Racer so far are above the cutoff line. Mac Gaming will also be joining them above the cutoff line, as he will jump up with King Mufasa being out. Captain Dead Dad, Savexi, Garrison, Team Air Jordan, and Sir Sadsack are going to round out your playoff lineup. With the interesting suspension and the change in everything, like I said, Mac Gaming will be right above the cutoff line, 1 point ahead of Captain Dead Dad. So you're going to have a 9-driver field when it comes to trucks. Jake, I'm going to bring you in on this. You are a driver in the Truck Series. What are your thoughts on the 9 that made it? And do you think they're all deserving? And what are you most looking forward to?
Shake, they're saying they can't hear Jake.
Oh, Jake, do you have your voice sharing on, bud?
Can't hear him.
Can they hear me now? Hello?
I mean, I can hear you. I don't know if the broad or the
All right. Can they hear me now, guys?
Yep, they can hear you. They can hear. Yeah, they got
Okay.
you.
All right,
Okay.
well,
So as I
let's
was,
go back over everything on
all
your
right.
side, Jake.
So okay, gotta love that. So one thing I could say is that I'm very excited about this field that's gonna be competing for a championship. I mean, you look at the 9 drivers. I mean, they have all worked very very hard, and I joined late, and I gotta say, just racing out there with Ghost, racing out there with Dead Dad. I mean, this is a 9-driver field that wants to compete for a championship, and I know without a doubt that they're going to have to bring whatever it takes. So to be able to be out there, get a chance to race with them, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, this playoffs is going to be very, very exciting for not only for myself, but also for Hell State, too.
Yeah, and like you said, Hail State, that's another guy I was about to
Mm-hmm.
bring in. I mean, you're in the Truck Series yourself, and it's interesting. We had a 10-race regular season, and as we've mentioned before, King Mufasa being out, he had 4 of the 10 wins. So that kind of opens up the playing field. What are you most looking at, like from that perspective? With I mean the absolute dominating powerhouse that King Mufasa has been in the Truck Series. How do you think this playoff shapes up with him not being there?
Yeah, well, the suspension to the 98 was a very shocking event that shook not only the Xfinity Series, but obviously, as we've talked about, the Trucks and the Cup Series. So, like you said, that leaves it kind of wide open. Just looking at the 9 left, I mean, I hate to, like, point at one guy, but out of the 5 races I've been in the Truck Series, honestly, the fastest guy that I've seen is the 24. Mac Gaming has been on his A game, you could say, for the second half of the season, and I know he's going to be the one that takes advantage of the suspension the most, you could say, as he's jumping from below the cut line to above it. But look for him. The Ghost and Henry and Speed are also up above the cut line. But Gary's another guy that can make some noise. I mean, honestly, the playoffs are wide open. Any of these 9 guys could jump up and take it, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. The Truck Series itself, I mean, even with King Mufasa having the 4 wins, it's been extremely competitive from what I've been able to see. I mean, the 4 wins don't really show you everything. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 2 of the 4 wins for King Mufasa were at Daytona and Talladega, right?
Yeah.
So 2 restrictor plate tracks where, I mean, it can be a wild card. I mean, it definitely does take talent and patience to win those tracks. But, I mean, you've seen time and time again, whether it be in NASCAR Heat 5 or real life, I mean, anybody can win at a restrictor plate. It's a wild card. I'm not taking anything away from him, like I said. It does take talent. It does take the patience. You have to make the right moves at the right time. But, I mean, you take those 2 races away and look at the 8 race season other than those 2, I mean, it's been fairly wide open. We've seen winners all across, from the Truck Series regulars to a few all-star drivers going down and driving, and whether it be hot seats or all-star rides. I think the thing that really intrigues me the most about the playoffs, especially in this league, I mean, the schedule itself. I mean, we are looking at 4 fairly different racetracks before we even get to Las Vegas. I mean, we have Homestead, which, I mean, that it's always a fun track. Formerly was the Truck Series Championship the last season in Hennessy, and it proved to be a really good race. Then you have New Hampshire, the flat banking. I mean, there's a little bit of banking, but not much. The mile racetrack, very good racing. You're going to see the bumper used there. Then we go road course racing at Watkins Glen. I mean, does that give somebody below the cut line that's a good road course racer a chance to get that win and automatically get that berth to Vegas? And then to end it all, before we get to the championship race, the cutoff race, we're going to be going to Bristol, a short track, beating and banging. I mean, we could see some crazy stuff potentially at Bristol to get that last spot if that's what it's going to take. And I think those 4 races, I think those are 4 very good races for wide variety, and it's going to add some really good entertainment and action for the Truck Series.
I totally agree.
I agree, yeah.
And so, I mean, like we've already gone to quite a few tracks this year. I mean, Eldora, the doubleheader, I mean, it was fairly dominated, if I'm not mistaken, that night. Did we have the same winner in both races, or was it?
I know Mufasa won one.
Mufasa won one. I know Heredia went down, and he was up front almost all race.
Yeah. If you look at it, though, Mufasa's dominance per se, I mean, he won at 2 super speedways and he won a dirt race.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are 3, I don't want to say Mickey, but 3 wild card events. I mean, he really wasn't that dominant, despite what the standings might have told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not wrong about that. And looking back through the league news, small NASCAR fan, he won the second Eldora race after a late race pass on Mufasa.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's these 4 races are going to be really interesting because, I mean, it's 4 completely different driving styles, and I mean, you just look at how competitive and how wide open the Truck Series itself is and has been this season. I mean, I don't know if there's a heavy favorite per se, like in the other series we have in the Truck Series. I really feel like it is the wild card series in Hennessy.
I mean, really, truly, if you look at it this way, I mean, the Truck Series, I mean, this has pretty much been the most unpredictable series we've seen this season. I mean, we've seen favorites in Xfinity and Cup, but, I mean, whenever you look to the truck side of things, the 9 drivers that are competing for a championship are all incredible in their own way. So, I mean, honestly, I can't even tell you who I want to see win the first race tonight. However, I do expect to see something incredible as far as these 9 drivers are. We're pretty much going to be doing whatever it takes to be able to win a championship.
Yeah, I agree. But I'll give you a little keys to success, if you will. if you're one of the guys that is sitting in the playoffs, you want to win tonight because you go to New Hampshire next week. It's probably going to end up being a fuel-saving race. We've seen that several times before. Watkins Glen is a road course, which unless you're just a road course ringer, you probably do not have the best shot because I can definitely see a couple all-star guys dropping down and trying to take that one. And then Bristol's a wild card. I mean, at the end of the day, Bristol, you could be running fine and then get bumped or caught in lap traffic and lose everything. So I would say Homestead's probably the most for-sure track out of the four. So if you're a playoff guy, it's important to have a good night tonight.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. And I mean, it's like you just said, it's the most for sure, the most straight up race we're gonna see in this. Like you said, New Hampshire could very easily be a fuel saving race. The drop downs and the all star trucks for Watkins Glen, and then Bristol just being chaotic as it is, no matter if it's in real life or in this game. Bristol's always going to give you that drama. And I think the admin team that put this schedule together, putting Bristol right there at the cutoff race, knew what they were doing on that one. I think it's going to add a little bit of drama. And, I mean, who knows? I mean, you could very easily see somebody win that Bristol race, but move somebody to do it, and it come back to bite him in the championship race. I mean, I think tempers are going to flare because it's that Bristol race, it's hectic whether it's the 8th race in the regular season or the cutoff race to go to the championship race. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see the typical short track action and the typical short track tempers. And I really like putting that as the cutoff race. I thought that was a really nice twist by the admin team. A very good job by them.
Very good job.
Yeah, so, I mean, when it comes to the trucks then, I mean, Hail State, you're down there full-time now. You race with a lot of these guys. We've talked about the King Mufasa suspension and how that affects the playoffs. But I'm going to kind of just, give you a few interview questions and see how you feel about this. I mean, we talked about it, obviously, the schedule. It's going to be 4 very different races. And you mentioned Mac previously. So who do you think really steps up the most in the absence of King Mufasa?
Well, I mean, I said it before, and I guess I'll say it again. The 24 has been fast. Hasn't gotten a win, 2 top 5s. He's only raced 6 times out of the 10. Another guy that's been fast is Ghost. I remember calling the race he ran away with to Texas earlier in the year. Air Jordan. Air Jordan's a sleeper. It's anyone can win. I mean, it's so hard to call your shot here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then for somebody like yourself who you're not in the playoffs, but you're still racing. You still want to win. How do you approach these next 4 races? I mean, are you going to necessarily pull over? Do you have anybody that you're going to work with a little bit more? Is there anything that happened in the season that might lead you to, be a little bit more difficult to pass for any of these guys?
Come on now. We ain't pulling over for nobody. No, I'm just look at it as another race. You might be more incentivized to go for, ballsy fuel strategies or whatever, because really at this point, the only thing you can do is go out there and win. But just look at it as another week. It was unfortunate that I hopped into this series as late as I did, or I think I might have had a shot. But here we are. I mean, I've had decent speed, I think. I mean, obviously, there are people out there who believe the opposite, but whatever. As for things that have rubbed me wrong, not really. Just going out there, putting on a show for the fans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so when it comes to like that last statement about, things rubbing you the wrong way, I mean, do you think we've had any incidents in the truck series, at least this season, where potentially these guys could drive each other a little bit harder in these playoffs? Like, have we had any feuds that you've noticed? What have you seen on the track in the Discord server that like you could see some drama really intensifying in these 4 weeks?
Well, I mean, Speed's upset with someone every 3 laps. So, he'll I'm sure he'll find someone to bang doors with. Um, the Ghost has a big target on his back, I believe, from a couple of the other drivers, but that's just a hint. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, honestly, another reason why Mac might be a favorite per se, I don't think I remember anyone getting into it with him. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he has been relatively incident free throughout his time in the Truck Series, and that also plays a big part into it. You go to a track like New Hampshire, you go to a track like Bristol, close quarters, there will be bumpers. I think if you're a guy like Speed or Henry who's gotten here, yeah, you're here, but now you have all these people who want to go out and wreck you. So you're kind of up a creek when you're trying to compete with guys like Matt Gaming, because if I'll put it this way, if you didn't make the playoffs and you're sitting about 10 laps to go, you're about to get lapped, and a guy who's been rubbing you wrong all year is the leader, and a guy who you kind of like is in second, who are you going to pull over for?
I mean, yeah, you got a very good point. And like the guy you just brought up, King Henry, I mean, he has been involved in a few feuds this season. If you remember going back to the race you called, Texas, it was Ghost and Elite that pulled away, and then Elite lagged out, and it was just really Ghost race to win at that point. But the battle at that point came for second place, and King Henry got into it with a few people. And like, do you think some of these drivers really remember back to that? And do you think they're holding on to that? I mean, a lot of these guys. I mean, this is my first season in Hennessy, but I've noticed a lot of these guys, they don't seem to forget. If you rub them the wrong way, they're gonna make sure they get back even with you. Do you think that's going to really affect King Henry, who has had a very good season and for himself? Do you think that could affect him in potentially making the championship four?
Yeah, well, there's an old saying that goes, you can call race car drivers dumb and dumb as rocks or whatever, but they got a good memory. They will remember if you did something wrong to them. I mean, three of the guys that are in the playoffs, really, actually on the same team, Dead Dad, Henry, and Speed, have been getting into it with other people every single week. And I think it comes back to bite them. I would not be surprised if you're looking at the championship four without a Toyota. Maybe with only one Toyota if one of them manages to survive the flame. But there would definitely not be more than two. I think that someone who has been rubbed by them at some point of the season, maybe we see a little Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano moment at Bristol. I don't know. But I can tell that there's definitely animosity between KBM and the rest of the series. So if you're not a KBM truck, odds are you're pulling against them. So, I mean, that's just how it is. They've made their bed, now they got to sleep in it.
I mean, coming from myself, and especially when it comes to the rest of the KBM drivers, I feel like that I'm the only one that doesn't really have any beef with anybody. So I'm just gonna stay on the good side for right now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and that's an important thing to do. And I think there's some drivers in this playoff field that have done that. I mean, from the Truck Series races that I've called or seen, Ghost, I don't think he's really had any issues with anybody in the Truck Series per se, or even any series. I mean, he's been one of the cleaner drivers I've raced with all season. So I mean, somebody like him who has speed, who has the racecraft. I mean, I think it suits him very well to have not made any enemies as people that we've talked about previously, like Henry and Dead Dad and Speed. I mean, and that's the one thing that I have noticed in this league as well is, I mean, even if you tick somebody off in a different series and you see them the very next week in a different one, you're going to get raced harder no matter what. And, I mean, there's a lot of people who aren't very happy with some of the moves that some of these drivers have made in other series. I mean, and it brings me back to Dead Dad. I mean, some questionable moves were pulled in a Cup Series race by him earlier this season, and I could easily see some people still being upset about that and potentially taking it out on him in the Truck Series playoffs. So it's kind of just one of those situations where, I mean, like, keeping your nose clean throughout the season could have been a big factor that was overlooked by a lot of these drivers.
Yeah, for sure. If you're a guy like Ghost who's sitting here and you are, according to at least the standings, one of the 3 championship contenders, and the other 2, well, Captain Dead Dad's not really a threat. If you're the other 2, Speed and Henry around you, you like to see this. You like to see the 2 guys that you're fighting with have these beefs with these other drivers, because they're not gonna. They're not gonna race them nicely. It's not all teddy bears and hugs. You go out there and you just are sing kumbaya with people, even though they wrecked you. You don't do that. That's just not how this thing works, as we've seen plenty of times. I'll think back to a race. I can't remember exactly what season it was. It was a Truck Series race at Bristol, much like the one that we've got coming up. That was a cutoff for Championship 4 that ended with a great finish, but it also had a lot of people getting bumped for stuff they did first, second, third week of the season. You know, you keep that in your mind. The smart ones know when to wreck and how to wreck.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I mean, and like you said, like and kind of something I've gone back on too. Like this Hennessy itself, it's easily the most competitive league I've raced in on NASCAR Heat, but it's also at times the most aggressive league I've raced in. And a lot of these drivers, I mean, whether they're in the playoffs or not, I feel like these next 4 weeks could be chaotic when it comes to, I mean, payback and just trying to sneak their way into the championship 4. But the final takes on the truck series. Masopes, are you here, bud? All right, we still don't have Masopes. So Jake, I'll go ahead and ask you, who are your picks for your championship 4 in the truck series?
Honestly, the first one, because I've known the guy since I joined Hennessy, I'm gonna have to give it to Ghost. Second one, I mean, you look at it this way, I have to put in a KBM driver, so I'm gonna have to say Captain Dead Dad. Third one, I gotta give it to Matt Gaming as well. And my fourth one, this is what's going to be a very big tricky one, because I mean, I raced with Gary. Gary is a very aggressive driver, but I expect him to do good. But if I'm going to have to pick up somebody on my spot, I'm going to have to say, King Henry. King Henry. I say 2 out of 3 KBM drivers, because let me tell you why. You can't forget, King Henry is a driver who was also won the Truck Series Championship too. And I know he's very passionate, so I expect to see him in the Final 4 as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then Hail State, I'm gonna go to you. I mean, who do you think is going to be our championship 4 in the truck series?
All right. Give me Ghost, Mac, as I've already said. We'll throw Henry in there because I think he's in the best spot where if he gets wrecked, it won't affect him as much as it affects Speed or Dead Dad. And then give me, you know what? Give me Team Air Jordan, a guy who we haven't talked about a lot on this podcast. I know I've raced with him in several leagues. Very good fuel strategist. With tracks like New Hampshire and Watkins Glen, and maybe even tonight at Homestead coming up, fuel strategy could play a part. Not necessarily to go up there and win, but to get consistent good finishes. If you look at any of these guys on the board, the 40 truck's one of the guys that I'd pick out to finish in the top 5 every single race. So give me the 40 truck of Team Air Jordan in the Final 4.
All right, I like those picks. My Final 4, I'm gonna go with the Ghost. I think he's going to win one of these 4 races. I could easily see him winning at Watkins Glen, a very good road course racer. I think Speed is going to get it done. I think Speed's going to find a way into the Final 4. I think Mac Gaming is going to continue on his hot streak. Very good finishes from him. I think he is going to be the 3rd driver. And then even with all the turmoil, I think King Henry is going to get it done. Like Jake said, he's won a Truck Series championship in this league before. He's shown he can do it, and I think he'll find a way to get it done in these next 4 races, and I think he'll round out the championship 4 headed to Vegas. But that's pretty much going to wrap everything up on the Truck Series side of things. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and then we are going to get into the Xfinity Series action. Before we do, though, let's check the comment section on our YouTube channel. I believe we have some people in here giving their Championship 4 predictions. We do. We have Joker in here. He has his Championship 4 as King Henry, Max, Speed, and Ghost. Cody the Bear, somebody who we're about to talk about in the Xfinity Series, he has King Henry, Mac, Ghost, and Savexi, somebody who we didn't talk about at all, sneaking into the Championship 4. So, I mean, there's definitely people. All nine of these guys have the talent and the ability to do it. It's going to be interesting to see who can stay the most consistent or who can just sneak one of those wins and lock themselves in. But the Truck Series playoff action actually starts tonight at Homestead, 9 o'clock. I will be actually calling it. I look forward to it. But as I said, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will get to the Xfinity Series recap. All right, everybody. We are back from the break, and now we are going to get into the Xfinity Series, which, in my personal opinion, has been the most entertaining, crazy series we have to offer in this league. We'll get into a little bit of that here in a minute, but I'm going to go over your playoff drivers. And in this series, we have 11 drivers that have made the playoffs. And we'll get into that reasoning here in a second. But your 4 above the cutoff line is going to be Noah's Bowl, who is now Cody the Bear, Elite Precision, Nobes, and McCard Fan. Those are the 4 above the cutoff line before we even get started tomorrow night at Chicagoland. But right below the cutoff line, 2 points back, is going to be Hendrick 9 Chase. Then you have Kenny LaFleur, Masopes, Killer XL, Speed Racer, Captain Dead Dad Intent, and then the 11th driver, Wuchia. So, most of you all listening know why we have 11 drivers. For the people out there who do not know, we typically have 10 drivers in each series. But after an absolutely chaotic finish to the Xfinity Series regular season at Talladega and some penalties being handed out, we have an 11th driver, Wuchia, who has made the playoff field. Some race manipulation by teammates at Talladega kind of gave somebody, Killer, a fairly free win at that point. And I thought the admin team did a very great job discussing everything and going over it. And instead of, having the race manipulation affect the full season, they decided to put Wuchia in the 11th spot, kind of like real-life NASCAR did with the whole spin gate at Richmond when they put Gordon in. I believe it was back in 2011 or 2014, one of those years. So a very good job by the admin team on that situation. I'm very happy with that decision. Feel like it's very fair now. But Masopes, we got you back yet, bud?
Yeah, sorry, man.
Oh, you're all good. Masopes, you are one of the 11 drivers in the playoffs, but you were there. You were there at Talladega. all the race manipulation. I want to hear your perspective being in the race and even as an admin. I mean, your thought process on everything that happened afterwards and everything that was discussed.
Yeah, I mean, usually when we come up with these kind of plate races, we've had the situation before where there was a possible race manipulation and things like that. That's why we created the rule, because there was just some gray area with it. And unfortunately, the rule was enforced, and it was enforced to the fullest extent. I think it's a fair choice for who it was extended to. Based on the footage that we all received in the incident report, I think you could safely say that Musa was guilty of race manipulation, and there's no question in that, from my opinion as an admin. But really, just going a little bit more into what the admins and moderators thought about it. Uh, they all thought it was crystal clear, and the penalty should have been the penalty. The only reason why I felt like it maybe could have been a little bit less of a suspension, maybe like a one race suspension, still let him compete in trucks or something like that, is because of the penalty point license change. And that happened in the off season. We changed the maximum penalty points that a driver can receive to get a 3 race suspension from 20 penalty points to 15. And when you get that race manipulation penalty, it's an automatic 15 points. So not only are you going to be suspended for the 2 races that is listed, but you're also going to be suspended for the 3 more with that deduction of the license. And I really didn't want to see somebody not be able to compete for a championship that they've raced for all season long to something like that. Even a 2 race suspension, in my opinion, would have been acceptable. But because the penalty, automatically exceeds your license limit, that's why he was suspended 5 races, and the other admins disagreed with me. That's just what it is. We do it by a voting system, try to be as fair as possible, and that's the conclusion that they came to. And of course, I'll respect their decision for that.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely a very interesting ending to the regular season on the Xfinity side. Like I said, Killer winning at Talladega, locking himself into the playoffs. But with that situation, the whole race manipulation, it would have knocked Wuchia out of the playoffs. And let me just kind of hear your perspective again as an admin on what you all did, like putting the 11th driver in. Was that a hard decision for you all? Was it a fairly easy decision?
No, I mean, it was a pretty easy decision. We came up with it on the fly, just kind of right after the race, and we realized that, if the penalty hadn't happened, then maybe Lucia, if the events that unfolded at the end of the race hadn't happened, then maybe, something would have changed. But hold on one second, sorry.
You're all good. But, I mean, yeah, so we put the 11th driver in. Wuchia is in the playoffs. We have 11 drivers. But the Xfinity Series itself, I mean, overall throughout the season, has been, I don't want to say dominated, but you've seen 2 people almost every single week up front battling for the win. And the 2 guys I'm talking about is now Cody the Bear and Elite Precision. Both of those guys with very great seasons. They both only have 1 win, but it seems like almost every weekend or every race, every week, those 2 are up there in contention. And we saw some really great battles out of these guys all season. I remember going back to Mid-Ohio. I actually raced in the Xfinity Series race, but going back and watching it, it was a three-horse race the whole time between Cody the Bear, Elite, and then Kenny. Kenny actually got his win at Mid-Ohio, but then we get done at Mid-Ohio, and the very next week we see Elite and Cody battling for a win at Richmond. And at the end of the race there, a little bit of trouble for Cody, who was leading at the time with some lap traffic. He got held up, and Elite was able to pass him. And then with about 3 laps to go, Cody gave Elite the bumper and was able to clear him and get the win at Richmond and lock himself into the playoffs with that. So, I mean, these 2, I mean, they had a decent gap. Elite had a penalty earlier on in the season. I believe some contact with you, masopes. I forget what track it was.
Las Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas. A little bit of contact with you, and that kind of put him back. And Cody was able to take the regular season championship fairly easily. And then Elite also had a very, very rough race at Pocono. He was up front. A little bit of lag from Cody. put him in the back, and then I believe Elite either lagged out or left, but I mean got a DNF for that race. So I mean, the two in first and second in the respected series, I mean, they've been on track around each other almost all season, and it almost seems a little one-sided on the contact. I mean, you yourself, Masopes, you're driving in the series, you see it quite often. Do you think the incidents between Elite and Cody could really, impact how they race each other for the championship?
Absolutely. 100%. That's a lot of guys. How do I put this the best way possible? The two guys that you're talking about, Elite and Cody, no doubt they've been the two best drivers all season long. That's not a question. You can't question that. They've definitely been the par of the field. However, both of these two guys have the most enemies apiece that I know of in the series. So that's the risk and the reward, right? You want to be a big shot, you want to be the guy that's going out and dominating, but you're doing it your way. You got to think about that. You're doing it your way the entire time. You're moving guys out of the way. You're being aggressive. You want it more in that moment. A lot of these guys that have been around the league for a long time understand that the last 5, last 7, last 10 races, however long our playoffs used to be and however long they are now, those are the races that matter. The first step is getting here. Once you're here, everything else that happens after that, you just take notes. And for these two guys, it's definitely going to impact them, not only the rivalry between themselves, but the differences between themselves and the field. They've got a lot of enemies in a lot of places in this Xfinity field on a lot of different teams. And that's not what you want when you're trying to race for a championship. So I definitely think it's going to impact them. We're going to see when it impacts them. But, and in my personal regard, last season, I wasn't able to compete in the Final Four because Eric took me down to the wall at New Hampshire and ended up winning the race, and the win didn't get overturned. You can't give me the win because he wrecked me. That's not fair. It's not fair to all the other guys that competed. So in my mind, I'm not going to race him any different because we've settled our grievances. But there's a lot of guys with that Eric, their grievances aren't settled. And with my personal debate with Elite, it's not about what happened at Vegas. It's not about what happened at Charlotte with the net code. It's just the words after, how he took it after, how he approached me after it. Those you think about those things. Those things just don't go away. And I think for both of these guys, it's definitely going to cause some problems throughout the course of these next 5 races.
Yeah, that definitely could be interesting. And I'm kind of going to talk about you here, Masopes, so I'm going to bring Jake in. Jake, I mean, Masopes, he's a legend. He's been in the league the whole time, I believe, ever since the beginning, and he's known as one of the fiery drivers, especially afterwards in Discord. I mean, I had a little incident with Masopes in a Cup race earlier in the season at Richmond. We talked it out. We had our quick differences, and then, but I mean, Masopes is one of the guys that he's very, very open about how he feels after the races. But I mean, with like I said, him being a veteran, him having consistent speed, how do you view that as a broadcaster going into the playoffs for Masopes? Do you think Masopes is one of those guys that people know, hey, maybe I shouldn't move him for like a third place finish tonight because he might move me for a win later on? Or how do you think these other drivers view Masopes and his driving style?
Well, I mean, first thing, I mean, I've known Masopes, way before HPL even started. As a matter of fact, I mean, whenever me and Mason started in HPL, we actually started it together at first as broadcasters. And really,
I think
truly,
Jake
I
lagged
mean,
out of the
I've
party.
called.
Or wait, no mind. He's back.
Hello? Can y'all still hear me?
Yeah,
Hello?
go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyways, I mean, one thing I say is that Masopes is always going to be an aggressive driver. I mean, and that's just the way he is. I mean, he's always going to end up, pretty much getting rough out there, especially on the racetrack. But one thing I can tell you is that come playoff time, I mean, not to mention, he is a former Xfinity Series champion. He's going to do whatever it takes. He knows what it takes to win these types of championships. So I don't see the aggressive or all that junk being a bother because, I mean, it's playoff season. But Soaps is going to do whatever it takes for him to come home and win himself a championship.
I totally agree with you. And then another guy I would like to talk to, Wuchia. You still in here, bud?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right. Well, you yourself, you are the 11th driver. You are you made the playoffs after some controversy at Talladega from some other drivers. One thing I want to talk to you about. I mean, you've had some speed. I believe it was it Vegas that you got your win this season, correct?
No, it was Charlotte.
Or Charlotte, that's what it was. Charlotte, you got your win. Kind of a come out of nowhere win. At the end, you're able to sneak on the bottom, pass some people. But I mean, these 4 races to get to the championship. I mean, we very similar to the Truck Series. 4 very different tracks. We got Chicagoland, Iowa, Watkins Glen, Bristol. Which one of these tracks do you feel best suits your driving style and your driving abilities? And do you think you're going to be able to get a win at one of these, or even just point your way into the championship 4?
I feel like I have a good shot at the first 2 races, Iowa and Chicagoland. But I feel like I have to do good there. I have to, because Bristol and Watkins Glen is not very good. I performed in the Cup Series a few weeks ago at Bristol. I didn't really do good. I struggled. So I hope those struggles don't carry on to Bristol, but that most likely will. But Iowa is just a track that I love. It's multi-groove. There's a lot of room. It's just a perfect track that a lot of people can't complain about. And then Chicagoland is like I feel is the most closest to Charlotte, but not as close. I feel like I'll be able to have a lot of pace at Chicagoland. I feel like I have a chance to for a win, possibly if everything falls into places. You know, people don't race me a certain way, and I feel like I'll be doing good because I'm trying to win this race for a championship. I know what to do at what point in the race, and I'm not gonna be afraid to do it. If you don't like what I do to you, then you come talk to me about it, because I'm not gonna talk to you because I know what I did and I meant what I meant.
All right, and a very interesting take. I mean, and you've kind of shown that this season. I mean, there's been times where the bumper has been used. I mean, the one thing I will say, I've seen you use the bumper, but I don't necessarily think it's been like an egregious thing where it's an intent to wreck somebody. It's an intent to move somebody, and that's one thing that in racing, Rubbin's racing, the bump and run. It's a classic move, and I mean, you've done that a couple times this year. Do you have any fear that maybe some retaliation could be, coming back at you in the playoffs?
I mean, I know I really haven't gotten along with the SHR guys, SHR camp over there, because of what recently happened, and I haven't intended all that stuff, so I don't want to bring it up and be repetitive. But if retaliation does come to play, I've already gotten the green light from my team owner that I am allowed to retaliate. Not in a big way, but do a little walling here and there. But hopefully it doesn't. I just want this to be fun for everybody. Have a clean playoffs, and just fight for a championship cleanly, like you said. I've never really used the bumper as an egregious way to wreck somebody, but it may be coming down to that sooner or later when you getting rubbed too hard. Well, you just had enough of it, because sometimes drivers lose patience, and when they lose patience, that's the worst comes out. Hopefully, I just don't lose a lot of patience here at Chicago coming up, and I think it's just good and clean.
Yeah, I mean, very well said. And Jake, I'm going to bring you back in on this one. I mean, we've caught a lot of Xfinity races together this season, and I've gone over the 4 races we have. And like I've said previously, I mean, the Xfinity series itself has probably been the most chaotic but entertaining series we have in the league. I mean, it feels like every single Wednesday we see something crazy, something different, and we're mind blown at the end of it trying to interview these people, and it's just like it's absolutely crazy. So out of these 4 races, what race do you think is going to lead to the most chaos?
I mean, is it too late to say that I'm already going to predict the first one that's going to be crazy? Nah. But really and truly, my opinion as far as the one race I think is going to be crazy the most, probably going to be Iowa. Between Iowa and Bristol. Because let me tell you why. Iowa is what they call Richmond on steroids. Has a lot of chance to be able to make some impacts, but then again, you never know. But really and truly, me, you, we both called pretty much most of the Xfinity Series races, and I do expect to see something chaotic like it was in the regular season championship. And honestly, I think no matter what race we're going to be watching throughout this entire championship playoff season, one thing's for sure is that these drivers somehow, some way, always gives us the best races every week.
I agree. I think personally, in my opinion, the race I'm most looking forward to um, is going to be the Watkins Glen race. I didn't see myself saying that a couple weeks ago when looking ahead to this, but if you remember, I mean, the Mid Ohio race, I believe you and Furch called that race, and like, I mean, the three up front in um, Cody the Bear, Elite Precision, and Kenny. I mean, it was just a nonstop battle between those three, and they're all three very, very good road course racers. But then you go back to the Charlotte Roval, and it was a very similar thing. I mean, I got to call that race with an in-race reporter, Sharp, who got the win in his send-off. An absolutely amazing race. But if you go back up front, Kenny, Cody, and in the first stage, Elite was up there, but then Elite decided to put himself back in the field and was never able to get back up there. But when those three were up there, I mean, it was constant beating and banging between those three. I mean, they, in my opinion, are the three best road course racers we have in the Xfinity Series. McCard at the Charlotte Roval did a very good job himself. He came home with a third place finish in that race. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think that race, is a make or break for Kenny. Kenny, who, like I said, he got his win at Mid Ohio. He hasn't had the best luck this season. I mean, just really hasn't. So I mean, I'm looking at Watkins Glen. I think that might be the most aggressive we see Kenny, because my personal opinion from what I've seen this season, that is his ticket to the championship four. I think he's going to have to win that race, because
I mean,
in other situations, I mean, like a driver I just brought up, McCard, he has been consistent all year. I mean, you constantly see that guy in the top five at the end of races. I feel like I interview him all the time on a second or third place finish. I mean, and that's a guy, another veteran who's been in the league for a while. I mean, he's been getting stuff done, and I think he's going to be one of the guys that's going to point his way in. I think you could see Elite and Cody win their way in one of these races. So I think Watkins Glen is going to be the most interesting race for me, for the simple fact that there's one driver that I know is going to go into that race pretty much feeling like he has to win if he wants to make it.
I mean, really and truly, if you think about this, so I mean, throughout the entire time you've got a chance to call the all these Xfinity Series races, we've seen a lot of chaos. We've seen a lot of animosity. But I do expect, as far as the top two drivers, I mean, me, you, we've seen this. We've always called this between Elite and Noah's Bowl, or Cody the Bear. Either way, I do expect to see something out of those two drivers. Possibly, in my opinion, the two drivers that might make it into the Final Four. I mean, hands down, Watkins Glen is going to be a crazy race, but I mean, Chicagoland is going to be probably even more of a crazy race, because hell, I mean, it's the start of the playoffs. It's a chance for one driver to be able to get a chance to make an impact. It's all about trying to get a chance to bring home a championship. So all I can say is, come tomorrow night, we expect to see 11 drivers trying to step up their A game if they want to be able to truly come home out of this entire season win a championship.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then Mason, are you still in here, bud?
Yep.
All right, I asked Lucia, and I kind of just went over the race that I'm looking at the most. But for yourself, I mean, a guy right there on the right there in the playoffs on the cutoff line. What race are you really circling out of these four? And what race do you think you're going to have the best chance to win? And do you think you have the opportunity to perform well in all four of these races to potentially point your way in, or do you feel like you're going to have to win one to get in?
Watkins Glen and Bristol are both liabilities to me, and I'd say Iowa's, in that category as well. So if I don't win tomorrow night, then I think I'm in a tough spot. That's the goal. Try to win tomorrow night. I've won at Chicagoland before. That's the track I won the season 2 championship at, and I gotta, I think I'm pretty quick there. So that'll just be the track that, of course I'm circling. We all know I'm a mile-and-a-half merchant, so if I can get it done there and make it to Homestead, then I feel like I've got a great shot. I've won 3 times at Homestead, and the only driver that has 3 wins at that track. So I think if I can get there, I'll be a threat. But if I don't win tomorrow night, it's going to be a tough road.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. I mean, it's these four tracks. Chicagoland's probably going to be the easiest when it comes to driving that we're going to see, because I mean Iowa's not an easy track to drive. Watkins Glen, obviously a road course, it's never easy to drive, and then Bristol, I mean it can be very tricky. I mean, especially if we do get some long runs. But that's another thing I want to bring up. I mean, the one race this season that I did not expect any long runs in, Richmond, I think might be the fewest cautions we had in the Xfinity Series. So, I mean, when it comes to Bristol, I mean, you can set your car up for the short run, you can set it up for the long run, but it's gonna be either quick for a second or slow for a minute and then get going at the end. So, I mean, as a driver, you've done 10 races already. How do you approach Bristol then? Do you kind of go for an in the middle setup, or I mean, do you think we'll have many long runs with it being the cutoff before the championship race, or do you think it's going to be caution filled, or do you think we'll actually get these long green flag runs?
I mean, I suck at Bristol, man. I am horrible, but a good buddy of mine, a veteran, that like you were saying earlier, McCard, he's taught me a secret that if you're horrible at a track, nine or nothing. You know what do you have to lose? Nine or nothing. I tried that last season at Bristol, and it actually worked out for me. I ran a top 10 race most of the race and was running in the top five at one point. So we're just gonna do the same thing this year, nine or nothing, and pray that there's cautions.
Well, definitely a new thing that I've heard. I wish I would have known that before we went to Bristol in the Cup Series. I could have used that. But I'm gonna I'm gonna go ahead and kind of wrap the Xfinity Series up. Jake, who is your prediction for your championship four in the Xfinity Series?
Well, excuse me for a quick start. I have Lee, Noah's Bowl, McCard, and I want to say Kenny.
Okay, you got Kenny in there. Um, Hail State, are you still here, bud? Does not appear he is. Well, I'll give my championship. Actually, Masopes, you know what? You're in it, but I want to hear your championship four. I want to hear the confidence level. Do you have yourself in the championship four?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't. Well, if you're a competitor, no matter what, you're gonna have yourself in there. You want to win. You think you're gonna be able to win races. If I didn't think I would be able to win any of these races, I wouldn't show up every Wednesday. So of course, I think I'll be one of them. But the rest of the guys that I'm gonna pick is people are gonna disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't care who disagrees with me. This is what I've been waiting on. This is the most important question that I think you're gonna ask me. Not only I put myself, I think one of the two between Noah and Elite's going to make it, and I'm going to say it's going to be Noah or Cody. I think Eric. He's shown many times the season before he'll do what he has to do to get to that level, no matter what it is. He'll wreck somebody for a win. He'll beat you by 3 seconds for a win if that's how he wants to do it too. He's gonna get there. I think he'll be a championship four contender as well, and I think Elite is gonna fall out of that side. I don't think he's gonna be one of the final four. Somebody that you really don't talk about that much, somebody that's been in the shadows, but's been a consistent runner. He hasn't won very many few races these past few seasons. Is McCard, and the reason why I think McCard is gonna be in the championship four is, like you said, he's been a consistent guy. You feel like you interview him a lot, which is always good. He's good at all four of these tracks we're about to go to, consistent at them, and I just he's been that guy in the shadows, like I said before. In seasons past. He doesn't have a championship. He's got multiple Final Four appearances. He's always in the top three in the standings at the end of the year. I think he's tired of that. I think he's really tired of being that guy in the shadows, and I think he's my championship pick to win in general. When we get to the fourth guy, and this is just a toss-up. A lot of people will have a lot of opinions on this and whatnot, but somebody that I haven't heard you guys talk about at all is Speed. And Speed's been around for a long time. He's been around for a very long time. I wouldn't say he's one of the veterans, but he's seasoned. And the reason why I think Speed is gonna jump these guys is because he's the most dedicated. And I don't mean that in a harmful way of, oh, you guys should laugh at this guy for being dedicated and trying to win. He's at that point where this could be the last season. He's got something to prove, He's always had something to prove, and he's going to put in the most work of the next 4 races. He's going to be the guy that's driving his heart out every single lap to try and be in the Final Four. I think it'll come to fruition this season.
I can definitely see all 4 of those making it. My Final Four prediction, I have Noah and Elite. I think Elite's going to win at Iowa, and if Cody or Noah, whatever you want to call him, if he doesn't get a win, I think he's good enough at all these tracks that with the point cushion he has, which I mean it's really not substantial. It's an 8-point cushion. I think with how he's done in stages this year, he's going to get enough stage points, and he'll finish well enough to get into the championship 4. So those are my first 2. McCard is my 3rd pick, and honestly, Mason, I would pick you, but if there's one thing I've learned this year calling Xfinity Series action, I'm not counting Nobes out. We haven't talked about him much at all. Dude's got 2 wins, both of them out of. I mean, he won the Daytona race to start the season, but then at Phoenix, we didn't talk about him. Nobody talked about him at all. Fuel saving, got it done. If any of these races come down to fuel saving, Nobes is going to get it done, and I mean he's a seasoned vet himself too. I think the 4 you see above the cutoff line are going to be the 4 racing at the end of the season at Homestead. And it's literally just because I refuse to look dumb counting Nobes out. I've learned my lesson too many times this season, whether it be trucks and Xfinity. So I think he's going to sneak into the championship 4 and be a real contender for the championship himself. But that pretty much wraps everything up on the Xfinity side. We're going to take another quick break, get something to drink, and then we will wrap up the episode with the Cup Series. Alrighty, and we are back, and we are going to go over the Cup Series in the Hennessy Performance Racing League. I am going to give you your 10 playoff drivers, and here we go. The series regular season champion, Chivy the Champ, absolutely dominated this regular season. Looks like the heavy favorite going into the playoffs. He is going to have a 27-point gap over the cut line before we even get started. Then we have Heredia in second place. And we'll have the Ghost in third and myself in fourth, 1 point above the cutoff line. Right underneath the cutoff line, we have Mike G and Fireslayer, both 1 point out. Then we have Always, Marnes, and Riley. They are both 4 points behind. Then we have JoJo in ninth. He is 5 points below the cutoff line. And then the 10th place driver, Gathim, he is only 6 points below the cutoff line. So I'm going to hand this over to Furch and Jake. This being my own series feels kind of weird to talk about it myself, so you guys take over, and I'm here if you need me.
Alrighty. Well, so what we've noticed so far with these last couple races that we will have on our schedule, just give me one sec as I pull them up. We do have on the last 4 races before the championship at Vegas, we have Darlington, New Hampshire, Watkins Glen, and Phoenix. Now, Jake, I don't know about you, but I know all 3 of the, or at least all 4 of those races do have a level of difficulty to them that's a lot harder than what we've seen throughout the rest of the season. If
Yeah.
there's any like major issues you think most of these drivers will have.
I mean, really, truly, I mean, let's go ahead and talk about this, though. You mentioned it. The first race being at Darlington. Everybody knows how tough the Lady in Black is. I mean, we've seen the type of impact this type of racetrack can make. And not to mention, we go over to New Hampshire. New Hampshire could potentially be a fuel saving race. And then Watkins Glen being the road course, and of course, last but certainly not least, Phoenix. I mean, everybody knows how good Heredia is at Phoenix, and Phoenix is definitely one of those tracks that I feel like definitely deserves to be on the schedule. So really and truly, if you look at it this way, Darlington's going to be probably a tough task for our drivers coming up this coming Thursday, and I don't know who that was, but okay, I don't know what just happened there. But anyways, but I do expect to see something out of our playoff drivers here. Now, let me ask you this though, Furch. As far as the one that has the most momentum going into the playoffs, who do you think it'll be?
I mean, if we go off of the last couple race winners, Chibi's always been up there. I know Ghost won the last race. It was kind of a fuel saving race. But really, I feel like with momentum, I don't think there's anyone that specifically has like a strong amount of momentum. I feel like technically, if we do say, I would go with Chibi here just because of how many points he is above the cut line. But with these first couple races, I don't really see anyone specifically on here who's like elite at any of these tracks except for maybe Heredia at Phoenix. So it's kind of a toss up just in general.
I mean, not to mention that. I mean, and of course, I mean we got to go over as far as our drivers here. I mean, we talked about Chibi, but what about the Heredia God? Heredia God, he's always been a champion when it comes to the Cup Series. What type of impact do you think he's going to make in the Cup Series as far as the playoffs?
I mean, considering how he won a couple of his championships before, he's already got that issue with JoJo. I can't remember if that was season 5 or season 6, where him and Joe were fighting it out at Homestead, and last lap shenanigans from Heredia won him the championship. But that I know that's not forgotten. That's still something that's probably on JoJo's mind going on through this series. Just waiting
Yeah.
to see if he can get his shot to either knock both of them out or keep himself in, and take Heredia out of that final 4 spot.
Now, I mean, as far as veterans that are in the playoffs, I mean, we looked at Riley, we